It is now a crisis of refugees pouring into Europe, particularly Germany, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel is feeling the heat. Thousands of citizens are protesting against the influx of refugees. She says the situation in Europe is out of control. A local newspaper quoting her is saying, now all of a sudden we are facing the challenge that refugees are coming to Europe and we are vulnerable, as we see, because we do not yet have the order, the control that we would like to have, end quote. Protesters are blaming the refugees for a night of terrifying sexual violence at New Year's Eve events in Cologne and several other cities. Disgusting details coming out about all that. And it's also surfacing. Police in Sweden are investigating why the public was not informed about a similar incident, sexual assaults, in a festival in Stockholm last summer. Young girls sexually assaulted by men reported to be refugees. This is a story that is exploding, but so has the number of refugees. I mean, if you look at the local media there in Germany, they are calling what's happening there an inferno of people coming in. And it is actually, Andrea, not breaking news that they're having problems, because back in September, there was unrest between the citizens. Among the citizens and people coming in, they felt like the sheer number was just too great.
This has been going on for over a decade. And I can attest to that personally, having lived in Paris and having lived through two attacks by Northern Africans when I lived there, one in Nice and one in Paris. So this is very real. This is a very real threat. It is far worse than it was 15 years ago. And Harris, as you mentioned, it is now out of control. Again, it's not just France. It is Sweden. As you mentioned, it's Germany. It's also England. 1,400 young girls turned into sex slaves by Pakistanis, and all of these reports, Harris, that you mentioned, covered up by law enforcement, which makes me wonder, in the middle of this refugee crisis that we have here, whether or not we take them or not, the administration insisting on 60,000, over 75% of that 60,000 number, Arab men. Do you know how that would change the demographic in this country here? And they can't even vet them. It is a huge problem, and I wouldn't be surprised, I would not be shocked if it were already happening here. It begs the question.
Well, you know, Geraldo, I want to come to you.
I think that there's no support factually for that.
We'll see. All sorts of support for refugees coming from particularly Central America, Mexico, and other parts of the world.
Right.
What are your concerns or feelings about refugees coming from that part of the world, given what Andrea has just said?
First of all, let me say that my feeling about immigration and immigration reform comes a lot. It was formed by Senator John McCain and his efforts with Senator Ted Kennedy back in the day, the original push for immigration reform. I think that
I think immigration reform is a totally different thing than accepting Syrian refugees in right now, especially given what's happening in Germany right now.
Megan, I totally agree.
Just don't invoke my father in that way unless it's warranted.
It is very warranted. I am telling you how I was formed in terms of my opinion. I was complimenting your dad, who I have tremendous respect for. Jump cut to Angela Merkel, whose reputation as being a competent leader led her on the cover of Time magazine and everywhere else. Now she says that she should have put more controls in place. Duh. I think that what Angela Merkel has done is absolutely wreck the possibilities of logical immigration reform going forward.
More than that,
with all of these refugees coming in. She allowed a flood of people in, didn't vet anybody, and in the process not only destroyed the civic tranquility in her own nation, she destroyed the possibility that Europe as an integrated unit can exist without borders.
In the economy, really, I mean, there's a big economic point to that, because the European Union, I mean, this idea that it was all one economy was predicated, driven by Germany, on this idea that you could move freely, that they were going to be one big group. And this has done irreparable economic damage, as well as people flood over the borders, and she's forced to pull the fences up.
But the
That's
problem
going to
is
have big damage to this common currency.
This is a culture, unlike other cultures, who doesn't necessarily want to assimilate with Western culture. German shops are sold out of pepper spray and guns that fire safe bullets everywhere. Women are afraid to go out on the streets right now. This is a culture that is now sexually harassing women all around the country. It's a totally different thing. And when we look at this, we can't help but think, if we let those 65,000 refugees in here, am I going to be afraid to walk down the street in New York City without being sexually assaulted?
I do want to speak to the issue of some of the reports, as Andrea pointed out, that the predominant number of men, because we saw that. We've seen that at other points points of history, that men would come first and their families would follow. So that actually would not be something that's unprecedented. But what you're talking about, the sexual assaults and the details that we've read about men on New Year's Eve, hundreds of them preventing women from going along a route to walk home unless they were willing to be sexually assaulted. Which, who would that be? So now it's truly violent, right? But aside from all of that, what does this have the hallmark of? ISIS. This is what they do to the women that they take over. Radical Islam. This, again, is not breaking news.
They don't even
this
have
is how
to be
they get
carrying the ISIS flag to do this. You saw a Danish reporter dragged into a cave, basically, by a gang of men. That video has gone viral. It's on my Twitter feed. And you know what really disappoints me the most? Where are the feminists in this country? This is something that every woman who believes in equal rights.
Well, this is a true war on
feminism. Real feminists. Real feminists would stand up and speak out, and they're not. I've checked the National Organization for Women's webpage. They're not saying anything about this. And I ask, at what expense are we putting the safety of women in this country and around the world so we don't look intolerant or like bigots or political correctness?
Just 30 seconds. Germany is a nation of 60 million. They let in 1 million people. We're a nation of 330 million. The president proposes to let in 65,000. Let's not exaggerate or make hysterical the possibility of this happening in the United States.
Why?
Because of the sheer number, 65,000, I'll say it again, to 330 million, as opposed to 1 million and 60 million in Germany. Germany, this altered the demographic face of the Republic of Germany.
2 Somali refugees murdered people up in Maine in August. That story didn't get a lot of play. It's already happening here. We need to wake up.
I'll take you to Chicago. There's no, Somalians murdering the other Somalians.
Honestly, what you have is like you're saying it'll never happen here. They said the same thing in Germany. They said the same thing in England. And women's safety is in jeopardy.
The German experience is a reflection of the German government's absolute incompetence and their failure to comprehend.
And we're just
as
incompetent.
We will vet the people here. We will absolutely know who they are. I think that to gen up all of this fake fear is to avoid a reality.
It's not fake fear.
It is fake fear. 65,000 to 330 million?
You're spewing are the same ones that they
spewed in Europe.
And look at what's happening.
It's arithmetic.
No, it's not arithmetic.
It is absolutely.
It's common sense and it's reality.
Of Germany is now
it's a reality for American women.
1/100th of 1%.
All right. Real quickly, because I had said I wanted to ask you this question.
Yes.
And you're talking about the vetting process.
Yes.
It clearly is not working. The vetting process in this country. I mean, we've just gotten to the point where they've added social media to the
Tell me the examples that you have to reflect.
I don't have faith this government will vet them accurately. I don't think there's a problem with taking a pause. Every government's
Boston, they came in as children, Andrea. They came as children.
I don't have faith.
Hold on, Megan. The 2 refugees that we were just arrested the other day.
9 o'clock.
A murder in Maine. Do you want to address the Somali migrants murdering the family in Maine? Should we? I mean, I could go on and on. We don't have enough time, but I have this issue nailed down.
There are 60,000 gun deaths in this country.
Now you're shifting to guns. Stay on topic.
What percentage of them are Somali refugees?
60,000 refugees.
It is
Two
precisely
were arrested just 3 days ago.
You are voicing the demise of the Republican Party. You are voicing the political demise of the GOP.
Of the West and of safety and security of women across the world.
Put up the walls. Scare people. Make people angry. And then they'll flock to the Democratic banner.
And for good reason.
So is this
what good reason? Do you know anybody that's been accosted here? We live in a city of 8.5 million. Do you know one person who's been accosted by a Muslim immigrant?
Yes, me.
Oh my goodness.
You're sitting next to her.
When? What happened?
I just told the story on the couch in Paris.
Oh.
I can retell you the details if you'd like during the commercial break.
I can't defend.
I'm happy to fill you in on the whole story.
You consider people me moderates, and I agree with her. So talking about the demise of the Republican Party, just put it into play right here. I agree with Andrea.
I'm going to pick up here. They're asking us to move on, but there's overtime today online, so we can continue with that.
I'll be here.
Yes, you will be here.
if I'm still invited.
Okay, let's move on.